Hi, welcome to Rob Reloads. Today, I would like to give you guys a brief basis on what it is that I would like to do with this channel and basically explain what my purpose is for doing this and give you guys a real world example of what reloading different patterns, different shot, and different primers could be. What is the most economical, what pattern's the best, what guns you're shooting, what loads best. I intend to take you guys to the range with me and show you what these shot look like on pattern boards and what they look like shooting at clay targets. And I have a local club nearby that I shoot at often, and I'm addicted to it. And so I have tried to find a way to make it more economical all the way around, and reloading shot shells can be a good time. It could be therapeutic in a sense, and it gives you a chance to decompress from everything. And I ultimately would like to see more people get into reloading, and so I'm going to try to make videos of what it's like to have real world problems with these things and how to solve them, how to make the adjustments on them, and how to get this thing working like a well-oiled machine that it is and crank out 300 rounds an hour. So let's look at what we're going to load today. All right, so today we're going to try to load Perfect Pattern because we scored a good deal on this at a local retailer, and we were able to buy 8-pound kegs of this. And so I wanted to see what this was like compared to other powders such as Tightwad, the Winchester Smokeless, and then the Winchester Super Handicap. So today our load will be with Perfect Pattern. So the first thing I do is I grab a lineman's book and I look in here, and I've got an 1 1/8 charge bar in right now. So I'm going to come to the 1 1/8 target loads, and I'm going to search. I've got a few different primers, some Winchester primers, some CCI, even some Federal 209As. So let's see what kind of a menu I can put together here. The first one here is 14.5 grains charge weight with a CCI 209 primer and a Winchester WA12 wad. So we have the Winchester WA12 wads. We can certainly make that menu happen, and we have the CCI 209 primers. I generally try to shoot between 1145 and 1200 FPS. Occasionally I'll go over the top of that. So that load right there will be just fine. So to get that started, I need to reference what kind of a powder bushing I need for that. And so for that, we'll reach over and we'll grab our 2024 book. And I've got the MEC powder bushing chart here right in front of me. And for that Perfect Pattern, to get that 14.5, I will have to use a number 15 powder bushing. So I will show you guys how to take your bottles down and how to put that bushing in. So the first thing we're going to want to do is take our funnel off and make sure both of our red plugs are in there. The little red plugs like this are essential to not letting powder and shot fall out. So both of my plugs are in. So what I'm going to do is rotate that charge bar backwards and let those bottles come down and manage the weight distribution there with, almost a half a bottle of shot. That weighs quite a bit, as I'm sure you guys know. We'll set that off to the side. We'll grab our powder bottles, or powder bottle. Take it loose. All right, we can now rotate our charge bar back up. We need a pair of needle nose pliers, which I keep on the table. You will let your primer tray fall down. You're going to grab the spring. Come in here and get a closer look at this. You're going to take your needle nose pliers and you're going to grab that spring right there. You're going to pull that out and let it rest slowly. Now you need a Phillips head screwdriver, and with no powder shot in here, it's all right to go ahead and pull this down and get it out of your way a little bit. take your flathead screwdriver and remove this screw right here. Now you're going to be able to pull this bar out. Check, make sure everything looks good on the top of it. Everything looks good there. We're going to remove the powder bushing that's in there. And I'm going to set that right here. And I'm going to grab the right one here, which I got from the store today. Get a look at what happened here, and I want people to really see this. This is something to be very mindful of. I'm sure the seasoned reloaders see this and they're like, oh yeah. So this bushing right here, this metal bushing, is sitting loosely in there under your rubber washer, or at least it should be. And we'll show you guys the correct way to make sure that goes back in. So a big thing to consider here is making sure that the number on there is visible when you put it in. And there's a little window on the charge bar. You want to make sure you see that in so you know which bushing you've got in there. All right, now that we've got that in there, it's easier if you just go ahead and pop this rubber washer out now before you stick the charge bar back in there so it doesn't catch and hang up. And make sure you're aligning the screw hole to come back to the front. We'll push that back in. We will get our screw. And we will make sure that we get that screw put back in there. All right, nothing too crazy there. We will reattach our spring on the back end. All right, we got our spring back on there. Now it's important that we note that we are putting these rubber washers and these brass washers back in there the correct way. So they have little ridges. Those ridges need to face up when you put it on the top of the charge bar. And they'll look just like that. All right, now we will put in our rubber washer and make sure that it gets seated properly. All right, so before we flip our bottles back over, when we did that to our bar, our lock come disengaged. So we want to make sure that before we flip our bottles up that we push that in and set our lock back. We can now rotate our bottles upward. All right, and being that we have changed to a new powder, I feel it's crucial that we take a little time to drop some powder into one of these shells here, and we get an accurate measurement on the grain weight so that we know that bushing is doing what it's supposed to. So we can flip our primer tray back up into the halfway position. So we're going to take our AA hole in this case, and we are going to stick it in here. I'm actually going to grab 2 of them, and I'll show you why. So this time, we're going to let our D-primer act as a D-primer, even though it's a spent hole. We're just not taking that primer out of it for now. We're just trying to get this for weighing purposes. We're going to let this come over, and we're going to go up. All right. So now we've got our powder in there, and we're going to take this powder and put it over here. But first, you see our scale right now is not zeroed. So to zero this scale, we're simply going to take our big counterweight over here, and we're going to set that to 0. We're going to take this balancing weight here and set it to 0. And now what we're looking to see is these 2 lines match up. If they don't match up, you just have to play with the leveler on the left-hand side of the weight and raise it up or down versus which way it needs to go to make that level. So, all right, so now we've got our beam scale leveled, and we're going to take our powder tray out of it, and we are going to put our powder that we just dropped in, and we are going to make sure that we are getting the exact charge weight that we want before we just assume that bushing is correct. All right, guys, I think we've got the beam scale level now. We've got some shot dropped in there, and we've ran into a little bit of an issue. We put it on the beam scale. I've done it 3 different times. I come up with the same result all time. For this particular powder, we put a MEC 15 powder bushing in there, and it was supposed to drop about 14.2 grains, which the menu called for 14.5, so we were just going to double check it and see. What we actually ended up with was 12.5 grains. Looking at some of the forums, this is problems that a lot of other reloaders have ran into. And so we are going to go up a bushing size, see what that drops, and see if that gets us closer. If not, we'll change bushings again. Stick around. All right, so we got our other bushing in there. We got a number 16 in, and now I did not put the shot up there because I just want to verify that the powder is going to drop what it's supposed to. So for right now, we're going to stick that in there. We're going to drop it. We are going to go ahead and let that see. We're going to unlock our powder lock there. We're going to let that come over and drop the powder into the shell. All right, now that we've got that, we can take our other powder out and we can put that back in the bottle here. All right, so now that we've got that MEC 16 bushing in there, we have put it into our spent shot shell and we have stuck it on the beam scale, and we've come up with about 14.3.5 grain weight. So that menu we were looking at would have been 14.5 to get 1181 FPS. I'm going to say being, a couple tenths shy of the grain weight is going to probably bring us down somewhere around 1145. I'm completely fine with that, being that it's an 1/8 ounce and an 1/8 load. I think that 1145 will be just fine in this case for what we're loading. All right, so now that we've got our powder bushings figured out, we can go ahead and put our bottles back on and get to cranking some loads out. So we're going to put the bottles back on and we'll take you back over to the table. I'm going to take what we measured out in the beam scale and put that back in the actual powder bottle on top. Go ahead and flip my primer tray back up. Get that locked into position. I'm going to grab a box of these CCI 209 primers, and we'll show you the easiest way that I've found to put these things in. So we're looking at the primer tray now. We're going to give that a slight little pull out. We're going to take our box of primers and we're going to see which way is up and down on it. And then we're going to take it and we're going to slide it in there face down as such, with the primers facing down. We're going to take our box and we are just going to pull the box through, and then we're going to pick up our box and let those drop in. And then all we got to do is take the cover and slide it back in place. Oop, we knocked a few sideways there when we went in a little too deep on the front end. Flip them back over so it doesn't cause problems later. Got them adjusted. Slide the lid back over, click it into place. All right. All right, we can take our beam scale and set it back out of the way for now. Can't forget to put our screw back in our charge bar now that we know that that powder bushing is going to work. I'll start that by hand, make it a little easier here. I say that. All right, now pull my chair up. We've got our perfect pattern. We're dispensing about 14.3 grain weight. We've got our ounce and eighth charge bar. We're shooting or loading 7.5 shot today. Take our first hole. Well, I'm actually going to tidy this up a little bit and get my books and my empty stuff in the trash can. I got a bad habit of getting too antsy and just ready to load here. I'm going to leave my book open to that menu so we can reference it later. I've got enough wads to get going here. We'll get that. And for me, the first thing I like to do, and you can see my last two batches here, I just like to write down what patterns I used, what charge weight it was, and what bushing I used to achieve that charge weight. I always like to start by making a written menu, and cardboard just happens to be cheap and plentiful. So today we're going to load perfect pattern powder, and we know that we are getting a charge weight of 14.3 grains. According to our Lyman book, we reference that we're going to get about 1145 FPS. We are using a CCI 209 primer, and we're going to be using a WAA 12 wad, and we are shooting 7.5 shot. All right, the last thing I want to write down is that I got that achieving that grain weight with a number 16 bushing. That is very important to make sure you're using your beam scale and referencing, that we don't always just trust the book. Some powders are different, and powders change. So we need to always make sure that we're on the up and up, and we're double checking what we're doing and not just trusting that everything in these books is right. A good example is I have an old reloading table, or not reloading table, I guess it is, but it has a mech bushing chart in it. But it was from quite a few years back, and some of the first shells that I had loaded come out a little less hot than I intended because I was going off of an older mech powder bushing chart. So let's make sure we're using the most current powder bushing charts, and making sure that we are counter-referencing those charts with a beam scale and making sure that we're getting the grain weights we would like to achieve. All right, we're going to just start by grabbing an old Winchester AA spent hole. We've checked it. We've made sure this one's not frayed. It's great. It's ready to go. I don't spend too much time on that. If I get to the end and it didn't crimp right, I'll set it aside, cut it open, separate it, and reload the hole. It's not a big deal. All right, let's start. All right, I always like to start by running 2 just to make sure the crimp settings are right, nothing needs adjusted, making sure I'm not seeing any bulges at the bottom of the hole, making sure that the primer's seated properly. Just like to run a couple, look at them, and just see what it is that we're working with. The crimp on that one looks very good. The crimp on that one looks very good as well. It is seated well. There's no loose shot rolling around in there. Both of the primers set, those CCI primers stand out. They're very different than a lot of primers, but they are, they're very nice and they work very well. So we've got our first 2 done. I'm gonna just start the process, and we'll catch y'all when we go to box these up.